Worldwide, faith-based, community-driven streaming media. This is thevoice17104.com from the Allison Hill District of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Now broadcasting community radio from Studio A and community television from Studio B on thevoice17104.com.
Live from the Voice17104.com Studio B, it's the Ron Chappell Show featuring news, conversation, and entertainment. Now, here's the host of the show, Mr. Ron Chappell!
Thank you, Chris Thomas. Good evening, everybody. Happy President's Day. And I hope you didn't spend all your presidents today. Well, it's still Black History Month here at the Voice 17104 as it is throughout the nation. And we're still on our Black History Month series. And so tonight is the last 2 weeks. We're going to highlight some of the Black, not only Black inventors, but other Black notables that's been part of our journey that helped us secure the liberties that we have today. First, let me greet the engineer, Pastor Chris Thomas. How you doing, sir?
Hey, my brother, God bless you, man. It's always a great day to be above ground. It's great to be on the show tonight. So I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. Now, if you watched the show last week, you know that we were going to have one of our panel members. Chris, when you get a moment, can you come over? There's a box on the screen here, and I don't know how to remove it because, I'm from the 70s. Thank you, sir. Okay, one of our panelists, we have two very highly sophisticated, educated panelists that's been with me the past 3 weeks. And one of our guest panelists was going to host the show tonight, and that's City Council candidate and Iraqi war veteran and pre-law student, Mr. Anthony Harrell. It was his night to host the program, but I received a message from him not long ago saying that he has to tend to a friend that's under the weather. And so we wish his friend well, and we wish Anthony well, and we look forward to his return to the program. So tonight it'll be me and the other panelists, which I'd like to introduce right now. She's a nurse. She's also a candidate for Harrisburg City Council, which you'll be hearing more about. She's a business owner and a property owner here in Harrisburg. So we welcome to the program tonight. We welcome back Ms. Crystal Davis. How you doing, Ms. Davis? Welcome back.
Hello, family and friends of the Harrisburg area, my favorite city. I'm glad to be back here tonight, and thank you for inviting me again, Ron. It's a pleasure to be here and to be talking more about our leaders, our ancestors, and those that have paved the way for us this evening during Black History Month.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All that we enjoy nowadays, being able to live where we can afford to, being able to attend the schools that we're qualified to go to, that did not just drop out of the sky. And that was not just given. These things came from a lot of struggles, from a lot of people that were here before us. And now, at this era that we're in, it's incumbent upon us to fight and to make it not only sustain the gains that they've made, but to try to make it better for generations to come. And so we've been speaking about a lot of Black inventors and other notables that's been helping with this journey that we're on now. And so we're going to highlight some of those tonight. And I'm going to ask our guest if she have one or two that she want to bring to the forefront to inform us about.
Yes,
Okay.
I do. Thank you. So this was a time during the Jim Crow era when discrimination was pervasive and poverty toward Blacks and other non-white people. Transportation, okay, car ownership and transportation was limited. So when the emerging middle class could purchase vehicles, they faced a variety of dangers and inconveniences along the way. White businesses refused to lodge them when traveling, refused to sell them food, and sometimes they faced arbitrary arrest. That's something that is not necessarily isolated. That's a side note towards the Jim Crow era. But anyway, white ownership refused to repair their vehicles and was forcibly expelled from, they were forcibly expelled from white-only sundown towns. So in 1936, we have an African-American by the name of Victor Hugo Green. And Mr. Green published the Negro Motorist Green Book.
Yes.
This was an annual guide book for Black travelers. And I thought this was just so creative, just another example of how thoughtful and forward-thinking we can be. 1936 to 1966, Green founded and published the book to give Negro travelers information that would keep them from running into difficulties and embarrassments and make their trips more enjoyable. So the book actually created a parallel community and was looked upon as a secret roadmap. The first edition was in New York, was New York focused, then expanded to much of North America. Not only was this a travel guide for African Americans, but it was a vacation and a recreational guide that listed amenities in every state. Hotels were listed, boarding houses, restaurants, barbershops, grocery stores, and drugstores also, gas stations as well. And these places were friendly to Blacks. Blacks would find acceptance there. Shortly after the Civil War, shortly after, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, they outlawed racial discrimination and this publication ceased. But I just thought this was very interesting to highlight tonight, this travel guide for Blacks during the Jim Crow era that really was just a guide to, it was pretty much like the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad highlighted and depicted places where Blacks could go to be, escape to freedom on the trail, on the railroad. Well, this book did the same thing. It helped Blacks navigate while they were traveling. And again, the gentleman's name is Victor Hugo Green, and he published the Negro Motorist Green Book. And this was an annual guidebook. So that was my first.
Okay, yes, and that's all real. And I do recall seeing one of those books when I was young. Now, all Black generations here nowadays were all rooted down south. You may be like the third or fourth generation removed, or maybe the second generation removed from the South. Being that your parents might have been born in the South if you weren't, or their parents, your grandparents might have been born in the South. And so on occasion when your family, your parents would take you down south, and this is primarily back in the 50s or back in the 60s, that Green book was something that they really, really relied on because as Crystal stated, a lot of lodging areas, places would not rent to Black folks, okay? And there were certain roads that Black folks could, if they traveled on, they would come in contact with hostile militias. Yes, with hostile militias. They would pull over the car as if they are law enforcement and virtually rob the motorists and other passengers in the car. And that family had no recourse. That family had no recourse. And that green book, incidentally, we have a montage. We have a slide, historical slide, that's going to show some of the notables along our journey for liberty here in this country. And the green book is also pictured. And so, having said that, Chris Thomas, I'm going to ask you now if you'll play the 2 slides that we have. And mind you, we have to remove the music. These slides are presented with music. One of the songs is "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," but because of copyright infringement, and so that YouTube won't come in and snatch the video, we're not going to have any music in the background. So Chris, show the slides, please, and we'll come back and highlight some of the people. Okay, everybody, most people are familiar with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., okay, and some are familiar with Hannibal. And stop right there. Okay, that's the green book that Crystal Davis just read about. That was a green book. Okay, and let's see, the young man there, hold on a minute.
It's kind of hard to control.
Okay. All right, okay, well, I just mentioned some of the ones that we saw. And that's, let's see, Rosa Parks.
Want to keep going?
Yes. Malcolm X. Okay, I'm not familiar with that person right offhand. Okay, and everybody know Michelle Obama. Okay, Chris, let's go to the next set of slides because I believe that's going quicker. It goes quicker. This seems to have some sort of delay with it.
Start back at the beginning here.
Adam Clayton Powell.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to control these reels.
It was Martin, Malcolm, Huey, Alvin, Marcus, Richard, Jesse, Adam, Carlin, Gordon, James, Philip, Nat. Showed them not to play with us. Duke, Langston, Thurgood, Robert, Hank, Jesse, Jackie, Muhammad, Paul, Stokely, Mega, Webb. About 3 Benjamins, a good 2 Freds. Women like Harriet, Rosa, Ida, Shirley, Sojourner, Madam, Maya, Mary, Best. It was Martin, Malcolm, Huey, Alvin, Marcus, Richard, Jesse, Adam, Carlin, Gordon, James, Philip, Nat. Showed them not to play with us. Duke, Langston, Thurgood, Robert, Hank, Jesse, Jackie, Muhammad, Paul, Stokely, Mega, Webb. About 3 Benjamins, a good 2 Freds. Women like Harriet, Rosa, Ida.
Thank you. Okay, so those are a lot of notable people that helped us along our journey here in America. And I believe also mentioned was Marcus Garvey, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about. Matter of fact, we have a little video clip of Marcus Garvey, and also Hannibal. And I believe you have some information on Hannibal, Chris Thomas.
Yes, I do. I found it very interesting in looking up his history because many people disagree that he was actually an African American. So meet Hannibal, the greatest Black military general who conquered Europe. Again, you got to excuse, I don't know a lot of these names, so I'm going to do the best I can. After lots of digging and research, it has been proven that the renowned Hannibal was African and Black. His full name was Chenu Pechola Baraka, and he was an intelligent warrior whose origin includes military prowess and antics, which are still being taught in Western schools to this very day. So that's Hannibal, the greatest Black military general who conquered Europe.
He conquered Europe with a herd of elephants, I believe.
Yes, sir. Did you want your camera back on or no?
No, you can
Okay.
leave it off right now. Okay, and let's see. The young man that was shown on one of the slides, the young boy, I said I couldn't remember his name, and the one that got lynched because he
Emmett Till.
Emmett Till, thank you, Emmett Till. Yeah. Now, how many of you know the story of little 8-year-old Emmett Till? Now, Emmett Till was a young 8-year-old, as I say, outgoing 8-year-old who was visiting his family down south, his relatives down south. And Emmett Till grew up in Chicago, where things were a little more liberal among the races. Yes, Chris, turn my camera back on, please. Things were a little more liberal among the races. And so what happened, Emmett Till was talking with a cousin of his outside of a store in a little local town. And there was a white lady working behind the counter. Emmett Till was trying to impress his little cousin that he had a white girlfriend back in Chicago and that she was his baby. And that he addressed her, he called her his baby all the time. And the little, his little Black cousin was really surprised because things like that were not acceptable down south where they were living at. And so Emmett, so the cousin said to Emmett, he said, there's a white lady behind the counter in that store. I dare you to go in and call her baby. And so Emmett said, yes, I will. So Emmett went into the store and he made a small purchase, a bag of chips or something, perhaps. And as he was leaving out, supposedly he turned back to the white lady behind the counter and he said, I'll see you later, baby. He said that to the amazement of his cousin. The two of them left the store, left from the front of the store, and they laughed and talked all the way home. Well, later on that night, the night riders came to Emmett Till's grandfather's house. They came there. Yeah, this was something that was common back then. You know, if a Black person were to sort of act up, if you will, in town, and if the townsfolk felt like that person wasn't dealt correct justice, well, then they would do their own degree of street justice or vigilante justice. So they went to Emmett Till's grandfather's house. They banged on the door. His grandfather opened the door, and they said, we're here for the boy. And they went through the house, and they found Emmett Till. They drug him out the house. They threw him on the back of a pickup truck. They took him back in the woods, and they battered him and eventually murdered him. And they threw him in the river. And this incidentally happened in Mississippi. And so when the FBI got involved with the disappearance of Emmett Till, and they found out that night riders had came to his grandfather's house and had taken him away, they searched the town, they drained some swamps, and they finally found little Emmett Till, whose face was beaten until he was unrecognizable. Well, his mother, upon the time for his funeral, the funeral director in the church said that his funeral should feature a closed casket because of the condition of Emmett Till's body. And Emmett Till's mother protested. She said no, she wanted an open casket because she wanted everybody to see what they did to her son. And I believe this is a scene from the a funeral when they're about to lower his casket into the ground. Young Emmett Till. There was the racism that a lot of us face, and the violent racism that a lot of us face, back then. And so I'm saying that to say that a lot of young folks, a lot of millennials even, don't really recognize, don't even realize how far we have come. And it didn't just happen through osmosis. It happened through a whole lot of work and suffering from a lot of people before us. And a little writer with that story, recently, I believe about a decade ago, the lady that said, that originally told a tale saying that Emmett Till called her baby, she's come out now to say that it never really happened. That it never really happened. And she was never prosecuted for it either. Now, what happened is that two of the white men that came there and took Emmett Till out of the house ended up getting convicted, and one of them confessed. One of them confessed. And told how they came, they drug him from the house, and they were driving him to this secret location. And they said Emmett did not know what was about to happen to him, so he was mouthing back and everything, like he wasn't afraid, but he was brutally murdered. And so that story, like some other people that we're going to mention tonight, I hope that you'll take time to go back and read up on them. You can find videos of them on YouTube. Okay, and that's Emmett Till. Okay, Ms. Davis, do you have another person that you want to highlight?
Yes, I do. I want to highlight John Brown. John Brown was an abolitionist born May 9th, 1800 to December 2nd, 1859. He was an American abolitionist leader, and he first reached national prominence for his racial abolitionism and fighting in Bleeding, Kansas. He was eventually captured and executed for a failed incitement of a slave rebellion. I'm gonna go down a little bit. John Brown was a man of faith. And he first gained national attention when he led an anti-slavery volunteer group and his own sons during the Bleeding Kansas crisis, as I mentioned, in the late 1850s. This was a state-level civil war over whether Kansas would enter the Union as a slave state or a free state. Basically, that's what he did all his life. He didn't believe in slavery. He fought against slavery. In October 1959, he led a raid on the Federal Armory in West Virginia, intending to start a slave liberation movement that would spread south. He had prepared a provisional constitution for the revised slavery-free United States. But shortly after that, he was captured and he was hung. He's important because he was a white man who fought against slavery during those times and a man of faith. Again, John Brown was born May 2nd to December 2nd, died December 2nd, 1959. Let's see here, what else do I want to say about him? Okay, so Southerners feared that because of the anti-slave revolts that he led, Southerners feared that others would soon follow in Brown's footsteps, encouraging and arming slave rebellion. He was a hero and an icon in the North. Union soldiers marched to the new song, John Brown's Body, that portrayed him as a heroic martyr. Brown has been variously described as a heroic martyr and visionary, and as a madman and also a terrorist. John Brown is highlighted in various Black history readers, and I thought it was important to mention him because I've read several Black history books, and he is listed in there because of his slave revolts and as being an abolitionist. Slavery.
Okay, thank you. How many of you have heard of Marcus Garvey? You know, there used to be a refrain that we don't hear much anymore. I guess you might hear it in some ultra right-wing circles, where you have some folks who are tired of Black folks asking for fair justice and equal treatment. And so there used to be a refrain, well, why don't you go back to where you came from? You know, why don't you go back to where you came from? And there was a Black man years ago who took that to heart. And he started a movement where he wanted to relocate Black people in America. A matter of fact, to join all Black folks throughout the world and bring them to a homeland. And that man was Marcus Garvey. And we have a video clip telling the story of Marcus Garvey. Chris, would you play that, please? Audio.
Level of popularity because of the efforts of the charismatic leader of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, Marcus Garvey. Born in Jamaica, Garvey grew up in poverty. He came to understand race relations through the lens of British colonialism throughout the Caribbean and Latin America. As his thinking matured, he began to formulate a revolutionary social movement. In 1914, he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, dedicated to uniting all the Black people throughout the world. 2 years later, he immigrated to the United States, where his powerful message quickly gained traction.
We want to unite the Negro race in this country. We want every Negro to work for one common object, that of building a nation of his own on the great continent of Africa, for the purpose of bettering our industrial, commercial, educational, social, and political conditions.
He arrives in an era where Blacks are still being lynched regularly in the South, around the same time that movies like Birth of a Nation are showing extraordinarily racist depictions of African Americans as monsters.
You have this really charismatic and dynamic individual, and he's talking about, look, our place is never going to be here in the United States, it's never going to be in Europe, it's going to be in Africa, we need to reclaim Africa.
So Garvey is going to be preaching a philosophy of Black pride. He's going to come up with a scheme to repatriate to Africa, and he provides a huge sense of hope for millions of African Americans.
A centerpiece of Garvey's program was the creation of the Black Star Line, a steamship line launched to transport African Americans who wished to emigrate to Africa.
The Black Star Line is this idea that Garvey can buy ships through the support of local African American people, sending in money so you can have a share in the Black Star Line. And these ships were going to take thousands of people back to Africa, to the colony that Garvey was going to establish.
But his advocacy for Black Americans to move back to Africa drew the attention of the United States government, and especially J. Edgar Hoover's Federal Bureau of Investigation, which monitored Garvey's movement, seeking grounds for his arrest and deportation.
Garvey was growing too powerful. J. Edgar Hoover is going to hire their first Negro agents to subvert Marcus Garvey. And eventually, they're going to say that he's been committing mail fraud with the Black Star Line scheme. He's eventually tried, arrested, placed in jail in 1925. He's deported in 1927, and he's never allowed to return to the United States. He dies in London in 1940.
Garvey's legacy as the father of the modern Back to Africa movement cannot be underestimated. He created the largest popular political movement in the history of Black America and would be an inspiration both to the anti-colonial movement and Black nationalist leaders throughout the remainder of the century.
Okay, there's someone, Marcus Garvey, who I suggest you also read up on. You know, we can highlight a lot of our ancestors that helped us along this journey. Sometimes I think now though, let's pause for a minute and consider why do we think that we are experiencing the things that we're experiencing now? You know, so I want to ask you our personal views on what do you think contributes to the condition that we're in now? And I'll start with you, Pastor Thomas.
Sure, that's actually a good question, Ron, but it's actually a question that's not that hard to actually answer. The Bible says the heart is deceitful above all things, who can know it? I think it's actually an attitude of the heart. In my own estimation, it's not just skin, but it's a sin problem that only can be fixed and cured with divine intervention. So that's just my thoughts and in a few sentences.
Okay, Pastor Thomas, thank you. Okay, Ms. Davis, your views. What do you think contributes to the situation that Black folks find themselves in nowadays?
Well, I think history speaks for itself. And when we take a look at the Constitution and Blacks being considered 3/5 of a human, some people still feel that way. And I don't think everything was sealed in terms of Blacks being free in this country. I agree with Pastor Thomas. It is a matter of the heart and sin also. And it's so deep rooted and inborn that it's going to take an act of God to rid us.
Okay, I want to, let's see, how can I sort of slightly respectably, but slightly disagree with the two of you. You know, I don't think that we should blame the devil for everything. You know, he's to blame for a lot of stuff, but not everything. I think that what's happening nowadays, the plight of Black people, the situations that we as a people find ourselves in, was something that was designed and programmed and orchestrated years and years ago. And in recent history, I think that part of it was probably due to the ADC, which the acronym Aid to Dependent Children, which I think came to the forefront back in the early 60s. Now, it was like a blessing and a curse. It was like a two-edged sword. You know, true enough, it helped the blessing part. The good part about it was that it helped to provide food and clothing and housing for struggling mothers who were reared families by themselves, because either the man was no good, he left the household, or the woman was no good, she chased the man away from the household, or whatever the reason was, there was a single mother raising a family by herself. And so then this ADC system started. Now, part of the criteria for the ADC system, however, was that a able-bodied man could not be in the household for the mother to receive subsistence from the government. And so systematically, men were removed from the household. Men were removed from the household. Now, the plight was bad enough for a lot of black men who wanted to do right, who wanted to do well, who wanted to be breadwinners of their family, because they were having a hard time finding employment. You know, you go out nowadays, you look in the paper, you look online, and there's jobs everywhere. You know, you walk around town, you could virtually trip over jobs, you know, for hire jobs or help wanted jobs and signs everywhere. Or drive through any area and you'll see that there are job openings everywhere. Well, it wasn't always this way. Excuse me. Especially you go back a few decades ago, and like I say, back in the 60s. And so what happened when they removed the man from the household, there was a rippling effect that we still feel a part of their current nowadays. Because what happened then is that you had a mother, and one thing about women, God bless them, they're blessed with so much sensitivity and so much caring that a lot of times they cannot rear children, especially young men, with the sternness that a father or that another respectable man can. You know, a mother can say, boy, turn off that TV, do your homework and go to bed. And the kid might say, well, Mom, let me watch this show, just one more show, and then I'll do my homework. And so what happens, he says, okay. And so the kid watches the show, he turns on the TV and he goes right to sleep. Well, on the other hand, a father could come in and say, boy, turn up that TV and do your homework, and that's it, case closed. Okay, so what happened is that these kids, and a lot of them, because they did not have a respectable man in the household, and because a lot of them rebelled against that growing up, not having a father in the household, and seeing that all the burden was on their mother, a lot of them grow up not respecting black men, not respecting black men that they will soon be one themselves if they're blessed, not respecting black men and not respecting authority. And because the mother can stay home all day, every day, that the little kids don't learn anything about punctuality. And because the mother is not going out working, because she's not a super person that can raise a family and work at the same time, especially to take care of 2 or 3 kids, to feed and house and clothe 2 or 3 kids, she sits there and she waits for the mailman. And the mailman comes through a certain time in the month and brings a welfare check or bring food stamps. You know, I know they have everything electronic nowadays, I understand. But back then, you know, so the mother waited around for the welfare check. And so with that, the kids did not learn anything, as I say, about punctuality. They did not see the mother practicing getting out the house on time, getting to work on time, you know, answering to supervisors or authority. And so because she's not practicing these things, she cannot pass those things on to her children. And so therefore the children grow up and they leave the house and they become company of other children who also come from single households where there's not a man in the house. And so therefore they join together and they sort of raise themselves. You know, they raise each other, you know, with the limited knowledge or no knowledge that they don't possess. Okay. And so anyway, they grew up to be a undisciplined, unruly person. And now you have disciplined, unruly persons. And so these same kids grow up and they end up, you know, starting families with a lot of times wayward girls or girls outside of their families, their parents' girls who were not raised properly themselves. And so they end up bringing children into the world. You know, that's when you saw, the it's a phenomena of 15-year-old, 14, 15-year-old girls having babies, and the father of the baby is some 15 or 16-year-old kid who don't know anything themselves, and they in turn raise them children. Now here you have two parents that were not raised properly themselves, and so what type of children can they eventually turn out? And so that's what happens. That's what happens. I think that's part of the ripple effect, and all that started back with the ADC program, which I think was a two-edged sword. And I think that's why we have so many rebellious young people in society now. Because as I say, society adversely have put the black man out of the black households. And if you know anything about the animal kingdom, all civilizations are under the leadership of a dominant male or dominant male figure. And so anyway, I think that it contributes to the situation that we have nowadays, I mean, not saying that a female or woman can raise a real man or a real man, but I think for the most part, I think that any psychologist, would tell you that because of the woman's sensitivity, and women are very, very, very sensitive creatures, very emotional and sensitive creatures. They tend to raise children that are the same way, and they tend to raise male children that are the same way. They tend to, and you encountered some of those guys, some of those men in your life. You've encountered some of them. They tend to be overly sensitive. You have to virtually talk to them like they're children, because their feelings get hurt so doggone easily, and they're not punctual. You make plans for a business situation or whatever, and they tend to show up when they want to show up. It's like they're practicing some rebellious side of nature, the same rebellion, if you will, that was probably in Eve when she was told not to eat the fruit, but no, she wanted to have it anyway. She wanted to have it anyway, and so she did what she wanted to do, and so that is a rebellious nature, rebellious spirit. And anyway, I think that is what contributes to a lot of the situations that we are now. Where our jails are full primarily because of emotions. A lot of guys are locked up right now, not because of something that someone did to them, but because of something that someone said to them. Because someone hurt their feelings or someone made them mad, and so, these were people who did not have control of their emotions, for the most part, Yeah, a lot of them are committed real crime, but a lot of those situations are situations that result from emotions. And a lot of them end up not respecting authority, not respecting other black men, because after all, they feel like it was a black man that deserted them. Now, man, you don't get me wrong. I said this is not absolute. There are a lot of women that have raised real men. There's a lot of women that raise good men. But I believe that's more not the norm. That's more not the norm. And so anyway, I think a lot of that contribute to the plight that we're in nowadays, And so do any of you have any comments? You want to disagree with anything I said? I'm open to hear all that, Anybody got any input in this subject?
Go ahead, Ms.
I
Crystal.
had some
please.
input, and I do agree that everything you said, Ron, is part of the problem for where we find ourselves today. Definitely with the Black man being removed systematically from the home, definitely plays a role. I remember when my father died, I was 5 years old, and it felt like the covering was ripped right out off of me, like that protection. And then, so when the father is removed, oftentimes the kids go wayward and they are subject to all kinds of evils. So yes, on the other hand, I think that with the some of the other races and some of the discrimination and racism in society, regardless of who a person was raised by, their mother or their father. They could have come from a great home with a mother and father, but then that racism and discrimination can stifle a person's success. And it's a known fact that we see, we know the discriminatory statistics in all arenas, medical, science, human services, everywhere. We look at our prisons, like you mentioned. So yeah, there are quite a few things that contribute to where we are now. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. Pastor Thomas.
Sure, I agree. Well, I agree with you both. But I mean, it still boils down, again, in my estimation, to a fallen world. Unfortunately, I believe there is a real adversary that would love, like you said, to remove, this cause dysfunction. So again, all this boils down to, original sin. So it boils down to, a heart issue. Because I mean, dysfunction was never the plan of God. Family, God is for family. So something came in between, the family structure because of disobedience. So it all boils down back to, original sin and the attitude of the heart, where God said what not to do, and we chose to do what we wanted to do, which is not necessarily our fault. I believe a lot of the racism that we're experiencing has been taught. I don't believe you're born a racist, because I grew up in an all-white town. I didn't even know the people I was playing with was white until someone told me. What are you playing with that white boy? I didn't know he's white. People thought I was white till they got to actually see me in person. They talked me over the phone. They're like, "Where's the white guy I talked to over the phone?" I'm like, "It was me." A lot of things, unfortunately, is just misinformation, and has been taught, unfortunately, in my estimation.
Okay. I thank you both for your comments. I want to balance a lot of that about the sin and you said fallen what, Pastor Thomas?
Fallen humanity,
Yeah,
fallen mankind.
The fall of mankind. But I want to say that these same things that you spoke of affects every other nationality too. But why is it that you go, as a matter of fact, you go in Harrisburg, you ride around Harrisburg, you go up and down Derry Street, and you don't have enough fingers to count the Hispanic-owned businesses up and down Derry Street. The business is owned by Puerto Ricans and owned by Mexicans up and down Derry Street here in Harrisburg. And you look around Harrisburg, the majority of the population's got to be at least 65% Afro-American. But the only black-owned businesses you might see in Harrisburg are a few barbershops, and maybe a bar. Other nationalities coming to the inner city, whether they are Hispanic or whether they are Asian, and they end up not only clothing the community, but also feeding the community. So what is it that keeps Black folks from not wanting to be supportive of one another? That's the question I'm asking. Why can't Black folks tend to join together and to excel like a lot of other ethnicities do. And I think that a lot of it is also by program and by plan. You know, I think that you know that there's been forces that intentionally want to divide black folks against each other. You know, and I think this started a long, long time ago. And I think that there's essences of that Willie Lynch letter, which some say is fictitious, which some say it's legitimate letter. But anyway, there's some examples shown in there how to divide black people. And we can see that a lot of that is sort of being practiced even nowadays. You know, what is it with black folks that we just can't seem to get along with one another, and we just don't want to see one another prosper? And y'all know that's true. Y'all know that's true. Like the old saying go, you know, you walk right by a black-owned business to support a business owned by another ethnic group because their ice is colder. You know, their ice is colder, or their water is wetter. You know, you walk right by someone that has a business like you have, you know, and why is that? You know, what type of programming has been set upon us? You know, it was J. Edgar Hoover, the late J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, the director of the FBI. He was asked one time, what is the greatest threat to America's survival? And you know what his response was? Black unity. Black unity in his mind was the greatest threat. And he really acted upon that too, because if we talk about the Black Panthers, if we talk about the Nation of Islam, if we talk about the Southern Christian Leadership Committee, he had the FBI infiltrate all of these different organizations, all of them, bar none. All of these organizations were infiltrated. Even with the disciples of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Pastor Thomas.
Sure.
You know, the stories that Dick Gregory would tell about how the FBI had infiltrated the comrades of Dr. King, and also possibly hired Jesse Jackson to work along with them. You know, so anyway, you know, there seemed to have been a design plan to keep black folks separated. You know, and so what Marcus Garvey was talking about, what Huey P. Newton of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, the original Black Panther Party, they were designed to bring black folks together. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, they wanted to bring black folks together to start supporting one another and start feeling like we can have our own too. You know, they don't want to see us always depending on somebody else. They don't want us out there in the street talking about Black Lives Matter to other people. You know, if these people are going to scream Black Lives Matter, first Black Lives Matter must matter to ourselves and to one another, you know? And so anyway, a lot of these Black nationalist organizations, that was their main purpose, and that was their main platform, bringing black folks together. And so I ask you, why hasn't it worked? Why hasn't it worked? Now, we only got about 5 minutes left in the program, but if you want to call in now, we will extend the program to hear what you have to say. Okay, do one of y'all have a comment on what I said? Do you agree, you disagree, or you got any comments you want to make about that?
I definitely
pardon me, please. The phone number is 717-889-7181, 717-889-7181. Pardon me, Ms. Davis, please continue.
No, you're fine, Ron. Thank you. Yes, so it does seem that other races are more cohesive. They work together more, they build, and we have to do the same thing. I think that it has gotten a lot better, but we have still a long way to go in terms of our race really coming together, trusting each other, putting our funds together, and working and building together. Still have a ways to go with that. What is it going to take to get us there? Continued awareness, supporting each other, having the hard conversations, men and women coming together and supporting each other, and just really being an example in the community. I mean, we have plenty of examples out here where there are African American businesses that are thriving. We have leaders in our community, but there definitely should be a lot more. And then one reason why I don't think we see much of it here in the capital city of Harrisburg is because a lot of our young talent, they graduate from high school and they leave and go to other areas where the culture is more cohesive. For example, Maryland.
Or Atlanta.
Is one, or Atlanta.
Yeah, but Atlanta
Yes,
all the time.
right. So,
Atlanta proves that black folks can do it. I don't know how much you know about Atlanta, but if you visit Atlanta, you see a lot of black-owned businesses that are prospering, that are supported by other black people. Okay, time is short. Pastor Thomas, you got a quick word, sir.
Yeah, I'm not going to be long-winded, and again, I'm not trying to minimize anything any African American has experienced. But there is still an elephant that's in the room. I mean, it's me first, selfish mentality, or the crab in a bucket mentality. It all stems back to a heart issue. There's something wrong with my heart. And, instead of, asking a lot of people, what's wrong with you? Why do you think that way? What happened to you? Even with J. Edgar Hoover, I'm sure if you look back in his history, something happened to him that he didn't correctly process. So now he's seeing the world through a warped perception of his reality versus what is really the truth. Again, I'm not trying to minimize, and I'm not an expert on the subject, but I do believe that there's a problem with the heart that only can be solved, above the sun. And until we seek above the sun solution, these issues will continue to grow within our community and the world abroad. And again, that's just my estimation, my brother.
Okay, thank you. Not saying that you did, but I would never make an excuse for J. Edgar Hoover. He was a vicious, hateful person, and that was of his own choosing. A lot of things have happened to a lot of us. I've told my story, a few times about the things I experienced as far as racism, even as a young child, even as a grade school child. But it was up to me whether or not I wanted to hold on to those things and act out because of those things. And my personal choice was that that is not going to guide me now. Okay, and J. Edgar Hoover, I'll say to that degree, whatever happened to him, he could have built a bridge and got over there too. Well, the time is up, y'all. The time is up, y'all. And we hope that Anthony Harrell is still safe. We hope that his friend is doing well. We thank y'all for taking time to view the program. And we hope that you'll join us again next Monday night right here at The Voice 17104.com. And I'm going to give my guest, a very special guest, Miss Crystal Davis, the last word, if she can briefly say what she's going to say.
Good night, Harrisburg. Have a great evening. God bless you. Until next time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pastor Thomas.
Again, we appreciate the dialogue, and I think that's a big issue with what's going on. There isn't too much dialogue, and even when we disagree, there's a way to disagree without walking away mad, ready to fight, or ready to riot. Or so I think communication is key, but we need to get back to and I hate to always throw the Bible into the equation, but I believe it does hold a lot of the keys to one of the acronyms for Bible is basic instructions before leaving Earth. And I think until we get back to the basic instructions, man, it's gonna be my truth versus your truth versus the truth. So, thank you for this, this open dialogue, that we can just come together and, iron some of these things out. So thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Crystal, as well.
Thank you.
Okay. And we're gonna do it some more. We're gonna do it some more, y'all. And this program is open to Christians, Jews, atheists, Rastafarians, KKK, and Black Panthers. Everybody have an opinion. If you can call in and voice it without using any profanity, your opinion is welcome here. So please join us again. Stay safe and good night.
Oh, wow, that was a great discussion.
Sure.
That was good.
Yeah, we need some more of that.